Hey everyone, welcome back for another Unraid video. It's been a while since I've put out anything. I hope everyone had a great summer, and now that fall is in full swing, we're going to be working on some new content. Today we're going to take another look at the latest update for Unmanic, which is now out of beta and currently in version 1.1. For those unfamiliar with Unmanic, it's a simple tool for optimizing your file library. In its early stages, Unmanic used built-in features to process media in a set-it-and-forget-it manner. It was designed to work out of the box, so to speak, but it didn't offer many options in the way of adjusting function or quality for more advanced users. The later releases of the legacy Unmanic versions allowed the installation of plugins to achieve more advanced functions for manipulating one's media library, but was still built around the initial Unmanic presets. Now in Unmanic 1.0 Plus, it's been completely redesigned to solely employ the use of plugins for each specific task, and I'm going to show you why this is so awesome. Unmanic is available to everyone for free, which allows the use of up to 5 plugins simultaneously to still achieve basic use, while subscribers obtain access to all of Unmanic's plugins and uses. Today we're going to take a look at a fresh install and basic setup for video media. If this sounds like something you're interested in, stick around and let's get started. Okay, so let's get straight into it. I've already gone into community applications and queued up the Unmanic container for download. I already have an instance of Unmanic running on this machine, so for the purpose of this video, I've appended the container name and app data path with test, and I've changed the port numbers. If you're installing Unmanic for the first time or doing a clean new install, you won't have to worry about any of this. Configuration is pretty easy, and you'll notice there are some pre-filled paths for our movie and TV libraries. We need to change both of these to our actual library paths like so. So I'm going to backspace this just a little bit, and I've got mine in media and movies. I'll leave that there, and then I'm going to do the same thing for my TV path. Backspace that. Go down to media and TV right here. The cache directory is also equally important to fill in. If you have a large amount of RAM, you may choose to transcode your files to RAM by using dev-shim like so, which will allocate 50% of the available RAM on your system for Unmanic to store temporary files. This is advantageous for saving disk writes on an SST and I/O overhead, but if you have 3 files processing at 10 gigs apiece for a total of 30 gigs, and you have only allocated 50% of your total 32 gigs of RAM, then you will see failures in Unmanic. If this is the case for you, then one option is to make sure you only use this for smaller files like TV shows, or reduce the number of workers from, say, 3 10 gig movies at a time down to 1 10 gig movie at a time. However, for most users, the best option is to make a temporary share on our cache drive, which typically has much more space readily available. So let's do that now. I'm going to open up a new tab under Shares. And I'm just going to hit Add Share. And I'm just going to call this Temp1. Now, I don't have a cache drive designated on this test server, but for everyone else, you'll want to hit right here, this drop down arrow, and set this for cache pool only. And then we're going to hit Add Share. Then we can hit Done. Close this window. Now over here for our temporary path, we can backspace this and do our MNT user, and then drop this down to temp1. For users that would like to use hardware accelerated transcoding, the instructions for each GPU type are here at the top and are really pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go into that here now, but just know the options there. If you've enabled GPU use on other containers like Plex or Handbrake, it's basically the same thing. And one last thing I would like to mention though is CPU constraint. There are some instructions on how to enable this in the extra parameters section. And you can also pin certain CPU cores for the container to use in the advanced tab. Unmanic can be very resource hungry, such is the nature of video transcoding, so this is highly recommended. Here on the Advanced tab, I personally like to use the CPU shares option under extra parameters. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can read more on how this works, but basically I'm going to allow Unmanic to use my entire CPU at 100% without contention. So I'm going to type -- CPU - shares equals 2. With a value of 2, the real magic happens if another container requests CPU resources. Essentially, this allows CPU resources to be shared between containers on a relative scale. If you go this route and you're unhappy with performance of your other containers, it's worth reading up on and trying different values. But I've personally had really good luck using this value. This will also apply to any specific cores you may have the container pinned to. So now that we've got all our information plugged in, let's go ahead and pull down the container. So now let's switch back over to our Docker tab. You can see Unmanic tests right here, up and running. So let's right click the icon and hit Web UI. On the opening screen, clearly we have a blank slate to start with. As I said before, Unmanic now uses individual plugins to perform specific functions. So before we install anything, let's have a quick look around. Here we've got our pending tasks, which is our file queue, our completed tasks, and this area here where our workers will populate. One nice new feature now is that individual workers can be paused and resumed individually or together. So if I click that, I could hit pause this worker or stop this particular file, or on the main window here, we can pause all or resume all as we need to. Now let's take a look at our settings by clicking here on the top left. We can see our main dashboard tab, our settings tab, and our data panels tab, which relies on the data panels plugin that we'll install shortly. We also have a login section for Patreon subscribers. If you remember before, the free version allows the use of up to 5 plugins simultaneously, while paid subscribers get full access to all the plugins. When one considers the cost of a new hard drive, you really can see the value in this subscription. I'm going to show you all the available plugins, but just cover today what I consider to be the core essentials to get us up and running. So if we click on our settings tab, we'll see the library, worker, and the plugins tabs. Remember, our paths we mapped in the container were each library movies and library/TV. So if we leave the path just as the parent directory of library, Unmanic will process everything inside of that, including our TV and movies folders. Of course, we have the option to go down our file tree as far as we want. For now, I'm just going to leave this set to library. The library scanner periodically scans for changes to the file system, so I want to go ahead and turn this on and leave it set for the default once a day scan. I'm also going to turn on the file monitor, and I'm going to leave run scan on start disabled, and I'm going to go ahead and disable follow symlinks just as a precaution. Once we've made all the changes that we want, we can hit the submit and move on to the workers tab. I want to enable 2 workers, meaning that I want Unmanic to process 2 files at a time. Now 99% of users will not need to adjust this cache path as we already mapped it in our container settings earlier. So let's go ahead and hit submit there. Lastly, the plugins tab. For the sake of time, I've already installed the 5 plugins that I consider to be essential for processing video media. These are the audio encoder, the file size metrics data panel, which lets us see on a graph the changes in our files, Remux video, which allows us to change the container of our video files, strip all images streams from the file, and our video encoder plugin. Out of these 5, there are 2 that you may need to change based on your use case. I prefer my files to use AAC codecs, and I prefer to use CPU transcoding with the HEVC video codec. If you prefer AC3 audio, for example, well, then you would want to install that plugin instead. And if you prefer to use GPU transcoding, you may want to download the NVIDIA NVENC plugin or the Intel VAPI plugin. The data panel plugin isn't necessarily essential, but I love to be able to see how much space I've saved with Unmanic on individual files and an aggregate. The Remux video files plugin changes the video container, i.e. the format of the file. Each different supported container format is available to select in this plugin. I prefer the MP4 format. Lastly, the strip image streams from the file plugin can save you lots of headaches with files that have embedded images, as these images can often lead to failures when transcoding video, especially if you prefer MP4s. Oftentimes a plugin will have specific settings to configure, so let's take a quick look at the video encoder. Below is a detailed description of the plugin and its features, and up here we have our settings tab. This particular plugin allows us to input either our own Ffmpeg commands if we want, or we can adjust the built-in quality presets to our liking. So if I wanted to increase the quality, I would lower the CRF number, or I could raise the CRF number if I wanted to reduce the quality and make it faster. The same for the quality preset here. Slower will result in better quality. Faster will result in a faster processing time. We can also select our desired output container format here, which is slightly redundant with the Remux plugin. However, if the video stream of a file is not processed because, say for example, it's already in the desired codec, meaning if the source is an HEVC, then the output will also be an HEVC, so this plugin will not run at all, then the plugin will also not change the container, so we would still need the Remux plugin to change our container for us. You'll also notice this little notification here at the bottom of the window. Each time we make a change, Unmanic pauses the current workers. It's worth noting that changes made here and other plugins are now instantly applied to all the files in the queue, but not the files that are currently being processed by the workers. If we want to apply those changes to the current files, then we need to terminate that worker or workers and re-add those files to the queue. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to MP4. You'll notice also that each time you make a change, a little green notification window pops up that says the plugin settings have been changed. So saved. So there's nothing that we have to submit each time we make a change on our settings. Lastly, we have our plugin flow. When a worker is running, it undergoes different phases. A file test, file processing, post-processing, and post-processing task marking. The plugin flow is largely subjective and dependent on what you want to achieve. So if you begin to add more than 5 plugins, you may find certain advantages to tweaking this flow. For example, the video trim plugin. I want to run that before I transcode the video so that there is less to transcode. If I'm going to remove 4 minutes of credits from the end of all my movie files, then I don't need to waste time and electricity transcoding those 4 minutes before I trim them off. The file test phase basically checks the library files against the plugin criteria that we have enabled. So if the file doesn't meet one or more criteria, then it will be added to the queue for that change to be made. This order is less crucial in this example, but that may change for certain plugins depending on what you have enabled. For the processing phase, it makes no difference where the data panel plugin is in the order, so I just have it here at the top. To change the order of the plugins, just tap and drag here on the right side. Then the first thing I want to happen is to strip any image streams from the file if applicable to minimize transcoding errors. Then I want the audio transcoder to run first since it will be faster. Again, if there's a failure with the audio, at least I won't have wasted time first transcoding the video, which takes the longest. Then I have the video encoder plugin set to run, and this will also change the container output format if it transcodes the video. But as I mentioned earlier, if I have, for example, an MKV file that's already has the HEVC codec, this plugin won't run, which is why lastly, I have the Remux video plugin that will catch these files and change them over to MP4 format for me. Right now, we don't have any plugins that'll run post-process file movements like the Mover plugin would, and the only plugin that runs in the post-processor phase currently is the Data Panel plugin, so there's nothing to adjust here. There are others in the Unmanic plugin repo that you'll find will show up here, like the Plex Notification plugin. So now that we have this all set the way we want, we can hit this back arrow. Let's close out this little notification here and hit our home button. Now we're ready to initialize a file scan. So on the pending task window, I'm going to hit show more, and under options, I'll hit rescan library now. Now you can see down here in the bottom left, the file scanner is running. Let's close this, and we can see our queue begin to take shape here. Now, of course, these workers are still paused, so under options, I'm going to hit resume all workers. Worker has been resumed, and we'll see these files begin to populate into the workers here. We're able to see what runner we have running at the moment. This one is being re-encoded with AAC audio. If we hit show more, we can see a few more details about what exactly is happening at that specific time. It'll give us an estimated time to completion, and again, we're able to pause or terminate the worker. So once these files finish being processed, they'll show up here in the completed tasks view. So now that these have had some time to run, we've got our files in our completed task view. Let's hit show more, and then we're able to take a look at the details of that file. So in this example, you can see the runner that ran the AAC encoder. So the input audio was AC3 right here. So we can see on the stream mapping that it was going from AC3 to AAC, which is exactly what we want. Then if we scroll down to the log for the next runner. So that means since there were no other runners that were logged on here, that means it was the only runner that ran. And that would make sense because our input was already in HEVC, which is exactly what we wanted, and it was already in MP4 format. So the only thing that had to run on this particular file was the audio encoder to change it from AC3 to AAC. Let's take a look at this one right here that's in MKV format. And we can see the Remux plugin ran, and it did exactly what it was supposed to do because the input video was already in HEVC, which is the codec that we want, and the audio was already in AAC, which was the audio codec that we want. but we wanted it to be an MP4 format. So we can see it copied the audio and the video and changed the container. So let's close out of that real quick, have a quick look at our data panels. I don't think we're gonna see a lot based on these few files right here. Yeah, see, all those files were already in HEVC codec, which is the higher compression, which is why I choose to use it. So we don't see a lot of space saving here, but typically a lot of the new media that one might get is in the old X264 codec, and we're going for the 265 codec. So one last thing that I want to show you to wrap up this video is the plugin repo. So if we go back to our settings and then go to plugins, at the top left here you'll see add new. And this is the official Unmanic repository that has all the different plugins listed inside of it. Now you do have the option to add a repository, a third-party repository. Here's the repository list for those if you do add those. There is a developer repository that most people probably won't need. But if you're wanting to try out plugins that might be in beta or something like that that aren't ready for an official release, you can get on the Discord server for Unmanic or somewhere in the forums and find that. So we can do a quick refresh here if it's been a couple of days since the last time we logged in. This will let us know over here on the right hand side if our plugins are up to date or not. And as you browse through here, you can see there are quite a few plugins that make them worthwhile, like being able to remove all the subtitle streams from your files, reject a file if it turns out larger than the original, path ignore if you have a file path within your directory tree that you want to leave alone, you can add that here. There's a custom external post-processor script where you can add in your own scripts to run on your media after you process them. Here's our video trim plugin. Another really handy one is this remove image subtitle streams. Here's the notify plex, ignore files over size. You can remove audio streams based on language. If you've got a file that has Italian and French and English and Spanish and whatever else may be on there, if you just need one, then this is a great plugin to have right here. And probably my most recent favorite addition is this one right here, skip TV commercials in your TV show. It's ComSkip. That's basically what it is, especially for people that like to record TV shows over the air. This is a great way to get rid of those commercials. It also has ComChap built into it, so you can add chapters to your files using this plugin right here. It's something a lot of people may not know about, but it does have the capability. I'm not going to go into that here now, but especially since ComSkip was recently removed from community applications and Unraid, this is a great little addition. And probably my personal favorite plugin is this one right here, Normalize AAC Audio Streams. I run this one myself on all of my media. If you've ever been watching a movie on Plex and you notice that you have to, on one movie, turn it up really loud to hear the quiet scenes, and then, you know, an explosion happens or something like that, and then you have to turn it down really fast so you don't wake the kids or whatever. This fixes all of that, and it's one of my favorite plugins. Whenever you download this, it comes with some information on how to adjust those settings, and I'll go over this in more detail later on in another video. But just know that the capability is there, and the plugin repo is ever expanding. And who knows, maybe you have a great idea for a plugin. You can always pitch that into the Discord or the forums and see what happens. But the new plugin system for all of these is really an incredible leap forward from the old Unmanic version. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. I hope everyone here was able to find something useful out of it. There's still a lot more to cover for Unmanic as far as the nuances of the capabilities and the plugins that you can do for your media. We're going to have some more content coming up over the next couple of months that covers some of that in detail. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, have a great day.